Bill, like I really want to get into the specifics of a competitive auction process. Can you describe, the stages of the auction process and maybe provide details of what happens at each stage?
Sure. The term, first of all, auction is used. I tend to use in these transactions, these middle market transactions, a negotiated transaction, which is maybe just semantics, because an auction to me is a big asset, something that's maybe well known, and the seller or the representative for the seller is able to ask the buyers, put together your offer. Here's a purchase agreement, mark it up and submit that, and then we will pick the best offer from those purchase agreements and be able to close on that. I think that can work. It's a little tricky, and I think a lot of times smaller transactions might not lend themselves to that. As far as running a process, we want to put the materials together, put a buyer's list together, get those materials out to all the buyers, follow up with them, get their initial offers called an indication of interest. Based on those, we review those with the client, have certain management meetings. After those meetings, and we're probably revealing other information along the way. After the management meetings, we ask for a letter of intent. There's always horse trading, always negotiating and so forth going on, but we're trying to craft a letter of intent that we feel comfortable with, and then we sign with that letter of intent and go through the due diligence process and close. So I hope that addresses the question that you were asking.
Yeah, sure. And Michael, maybe we understand your firm's kind of process. I mean, there are standard processes around this, but you move from an EOI or expression of interest to an LOI. Maybe talk about how you are whittling down prospective buyers as you go along.
Yeah, so to be very specific, you're saying EOI, an indication letter?
Yeah, it's expression of interest, indication of interest for sure.
Okay, got it.
And that's good clarification. So there is an expression of interest and indication of interest are the same things, or are they different?
Yes, no, they're the same things. I just based on some initial information, maybe not the secret sauce, but based on the information, we just want to get a sense, and we're going out broadly at that point in time. I'd say targeted, but broadly. The IOIs come in. And once we get the IOIs, and in the last transaction, I think we got 15, 16, we then selected the top 5 or so to go to the LOI stage. And at that point in time, now we're revealing some confidential information, but we're not doing it to the audience of 30 or 40 people, but we're targeting only 5 people. So confidentiality gets controlled that way. And in addition, so that additional information is what's, I'll say, the differentiator. The other thing we do is we have a management meeting. So now when the LOI comes in, everyone knows they're the finalist, knows that they're has additional information. And sometimes the price goes up and sometimes it goes down. It really depends on the information that you're withholding, or did you oversell in the phase 1? And sometimes that's the case. The other option sometimes is occasionally our clients don't hit their projections for the prior 2-3 months, which is a real bad thing to do during that time frame. So we can talk about that, but that's another reason why prices change.
Simon, do you find that the process in the UK, is it a very similar process? Is it a different process? And I guess what we're hearing from Bill and Michael is that it's very structured, right? There's a lot of structure and process and timelines being managed through this competitive auction.
Yeah, that's right, and it's the same. I guess each firm has the slight nuances around that, but there's quite a few of the investment banks and boutiques in the UK that are now US owned, so it tends to be a similar approach. The way we try and do it is we do have the timelines, we do try and run the back end of the process in a very structured way, but at the front end, when we deliver the information memorandum, we don't actually send a process letter out with the memorandum. And normally people will do that and say, you've got a bid on this day and we need your offers. We try and spend a bit more time with the buyers. We try and make the buyers feel a bit special. And it helps us because we want to get feedback from them as to what their issues are, what further information they need before they put their first offer. Because it's, initial impressions count for everything. We want to make sure, and once an expression of interest comes in, it's hard to move them up from that. They've set their first offer out. So we want to make sure they fully understand what it is they're buying. And if that means a call or a brief one-to-one meeting with the CEO at that point, then we will do that at that stage. And only once we know that we've got the sufficient interest out there, we've properly exposed the business, then we'll set the process terms and say, right, now you need to bid. And the advantage of that is, as Michael said, when he gets 16 offers in on an asset, we know that those 16 offers understand what it is they're buying. They can all be compared on a basis that they've received the same information, they understand the business, and we can make sure we take the right parties through to the shortlist. Otherwise, you do have, instances where you take someone through, and after a couple of weeks of looking at the detailed information, they say, actually, not one for us, not quite what we thought. And that's because they pick up the information memorandum a day before the initial offers and think, I haven't looked at this, I better get my offer in. I'll just bid 7 times, 8 times, I'll bid 9 times just to get through to the next stage, and then I'll understand what it is in a bit more detail. So we make sure we spend that time up front before setting the formal part of the process and keeping to strict timelines.